Welcome to Fatherhood for the Rest of Us with Brandon Handley. Because you're already great at everything else, why not fatherhood too?
Hey there, and welcome to Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. This is Brandon Handley. I am, as always, the host, the founder, and the voice of a generation. And this week, I'm excited to bring you DevonBandison, who has recently released a book named Fatherhood is Leadership. If the name sounds familiar, if you're a fatherhood fan, if you've been over to TED Talks and you've looked up fatherhood, you're going to find DevonBandison there. I looked him up a little bit after I got myself started. And the thing for me was I didn't want to go and compare myself to anybody else, so I wouldn't be scared to just go ahead and release a podcast. So that was how I conquered a fear. But once I did conquer that fear, once I pressed record, once I released everything out into the air, that's where I went. I went over to TED Talks and I found Devon and just really enjoyed the speech that he gave there. I found him in one of the Facebook groups that I'm a part of and made some contact with him and was really excited to have him on the show because it's kind of like having your heroes on. You get to be able to reach out to amazing people, have the conversations that you just kind of almost dream of having. And so for me, this was, I guess, a little bit of a dream come true. So guys, I hope that you enjoy this conversation that Devon and I have. We cover a lot of things. One of the things that he talks about is just being really excited about where fatherhood is these days, and just everything that's going on with it. It just seems to be a lot of support behind fatherhood, where I don't really think that it was as prevalent before. Talks about just kind of the balanced life and whether or not what's about the balanced life, right? Is there such a thing as a balanced life between work and life balance? We talk about setting up some morning routines and just kind of how important that is. We talk a lot about unconditional love. He talks a little bit about his coaching practice through this. We go through just like a lot of good things here, and I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. I would love it if you reach out to Devon, let him know that you heard him here, and just kind of what an impact this conversation had on you. If you have not done so already, don't walk over to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and a review when or if you get the chance. That's going to help others to find the Fatherhood for the Rest of Us podcast, and we'd really appreciate that support. And it's going to help other people, again, like yourself, enjoy this. If you haven't joined the weekly mailer for Fatherhood Fantastic Tips, I highly encourage you to do so. This week I released a great article from a gentleman named Jim Akers in how the news is kind of having an impact on you and maybe what you can do about that. Other than that, guys, man, if you are looking for a group of like-minded men, if you're looking for a group where you can go and share kind of some of your challenges or some of your celebrations, head on over to Fatherhood for the Rest of Us private group on Facebook. Ask for an invite. Pretty sure I'll let you in, and we can have this conversation there. And if it's where we all go, gather, and help each other through fatherhood. We can't do it alone. I wouldn't recommend doing it alone anyways. And it's a lot easier if you can get support and find out that there's some people that are having some of the same thoughts as you, that are going through some of the same things as you. And you're like, well, I'm not crazy. So if you're looking for a place that shows you that you're not nuts, head on over to Fatherhood for the Rest of Us and join up in the Facebook group. Guys, enjoy this conversation. I know that I enjoyed having it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey there, Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. I'm on here today with Fatherhood's primary speaker, primary to me anyways, DevonBandison. He is one of the world's most sought after success coaches. He works with Fortune 100 companies, professional athletes and teams, CEOs, salespeople, small business owners, and top business and life coaches, and everyday fathers, among others. He's an international and TEDx speaker. That's where I found the guy. Whose work has appeared in publications including the Wall Street Journal, Huffington Post Incorporated magazine, and Success magazine. And he's also, let me see if I can get this up there. It's just released his book. He's got it right behind him as well. Great read. Devon, man, I'm thrilled, seriously, to have you here with me today, and thanks for taking the time. It's funny, when we were going back and forth and getting ourselves started, I said, man, I know you're a busy guy. And you're like, man, I try not to be so busy. You have to give me the secret to that. I'm going to do two things here. I'd like to be less busy, right? Two things for you. First of all, what can we celebrate? Your book is a big celebration. What else can we celebrate for you today? What's awesome in your life?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the book, I think that, shows actually like yours, man. I'm not just saying this because I'm on it. I think that I'm really excited about just the fatherhood space in general, and how men are showing up to support each other, and creating better conversations around like not only what we're doing well, but what we struggle with. And I think that's what we should celebrate today. We got two guys. I mean, fatherhood for the rest of us, and I'm looking forward. I'm honored to be on the show and looking forward to having a little fun with you, man.
Absolutely. Hey, and that's the other thing too. You liken it to a movement, right? And I know I agree, man. I think that we're in a place that we're in an awesome place to be dads, man. We're Viva la Revolution for dads.
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal yours, man.
I like that. That might be my next hashtag.
Viva la Revolution for the dads. I'm gonna steal one of yours, man. I listen to a bunch of your podcasts, and I got two questions. One, what happened? Why'd you stop doing the podcast? What's up with that? You bringing it back, the podcast?
Yeah, that's a great question, and probably one of my most frequently asked questions over the last few months. I love the podcast. I had some really cool guests. It was Fatherhood is Leadership podcast. And when I dove into the book, there was a point where, like I said, I like some space in my day. And I really wanted to make sure that when I came out with this book that I had put everything into it. So I put the podcast on hold. I'm thinking about coming back out with it probably the beginning of next year. I got some events to go to end this year, but I'm excited. I loved having guys on, and maybe when we start back on, I'll get you back on my show.
Oh man, I'd love to be on there. It'll be like the Fatherhood re-released.
That's it.
Look, man. So you started off most years with this one, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna flip the tables on you. So what does fatherhood, and you can't use your TEDx speech, mean to you?
Well, that's great. Oh, wow, you threw that in. I won't use my TEDx speech. To me, fatherhood embodies everything, and one of the reasons, I think the most, if I was to put it in 3 words, it would probably be like influence, intimacy, and impact. I think those are the 3 eyes to me when I think of fatherhood, of just the influence of how can you influence your children by the way you act, not just by what you say. And then also, I think the intimacy of really it's an inside job, fatherhood. And oftentimes we think if our children do better, it's some kind of reflection of us and things like that. But what I've learned is it really is an awareness of looking inside. And for me, fatherhood is that unconditional love that starts from the inside out.
Right on. And that was 3 eyes: influence, intimacy, and was that on purpose?
And impact.
Was that on purpose with the 3 eyes?
I'm really into keeping it simple. I like the KISS method of keep it simple, stupid. I live my life like that.
Yeah,
I
man, that's great.
Myself,
That's a good tip, man. Because listen, fatherhood is confusing, and if the easier you can make it, it's definite. And I like the this, even we just hit on that, is that our kids are out there, and oftentimes we look at them as a reflection on us, and sometimes that's frustrating, right? And we really should just kind of look at them as a reflection upon themselves.
That's yeah. I mean, I just to add to that, I think you're right. I think that oftentimes we've been trained to kind of try to create these mini me's, right? Or a better version of me. So with my son, I played ball, maybe you want to play ball, but what happens is, the cover band is never as good as the original. So my job isn't really to create a mini me, right? My job is for me to create a space for my children to become the best versions of themselves.
Right on. No, I like that. I like that. Hey, a huge question, man, actually for you. I know that you threw this line out there, the Al Pacino line. They, you thought you were out, but they pulled you back in with your youngest son being in between your two others, right? So I think that probably brings like a whole new, for like all that time in between. How did you approach like your second, your second coming versus like how?
Yeah.
There's a lot in there. Is there anything that like kind of sticks out at you that went in between that?
Yeah, I mean, so my two oldest are 15 and 20, and then my youngest is 7, so that's 8 years in between. And I can honestly say the biggest difference is if you put the work, like I just learned so much more about myself, and the better I was with myself, the better parent I was. So I can, I made way more mistakes. I still make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. I probably am way more even keeled now than I used to be. Not too much stuff gets me too crazy and excited. I remember when my daughter was first born, her mother was like way more cool, chiller than me. She'd fall and bump her head, and I'd be like, "Oh, brain damage! It's gonna be over. Like this is gonna be forever," And I think the difference now is I'm way chiller. I see a little more, and like I don't take things too crazy serious.
Yeah. Definitely. I think that the first one, I mean, your first round, mine are 2 years apart, and the second one is a little less jumping up and being afraid of what's going on. You're like, I've seen this before. We're good. Except for when the second one, except for when the second one broke his arm. We hadn't seen that one before.
Oh yeah, that's a new one.
Let's see here. I got a lot, man. I got a lot for you. One of the things that I had in there was definitely in the book. The book is awesome. I'm gonna pitch it again for you. I enjoyed a lot in there, and in each one of these, you give some exercises at the end of each chapter.
Yeah.
Let's talk about why in a book like this we might see some activities and how that helps us, and why.
I use some. In my coaching practice, I always tell people that I'm going to give you some tools, but they're not rules, right? They're tools and not rules. So the activities aren't meant to kind of bog you down. I think the flow of the book is so that there's a nice flow of storytelling in the book. So I think what I've heard from a lot of people is once they get in, it's like this flow and story that they don't want to put the book down. And I wanted to give some real life tools for guys to do some self-reflection, because I found it was in my moments of quietness when I did my journaling, when I did some activities, that I was able to discover more things about myself. And that's really what the book is about. It's not a how-to in parenting. It's about how men can discover and become the best version of themselves, and how that trickles down to their family, to their job, to their finances. And that's one of the reasons that I gave these tools, but definitely not rules. So if you guys are reading a book, it's not meant to bog you down. It's really some cool activities that I've used with a bunch of most of my clients throughout the years, and they've really found it impactful and insightful.
Right on. Let's go over it. I mean, just like I got a couple that I thought that stood out to me. And the first one was like the legacy zone. Do you mind talking to that a little bit?
Yeah, the legacy zone. I talk a lot about legacy, and a lot of people think of legacy as like once I die, this is. But to me, there's an opportunity for us as men, as fathers, to have a living legacy, to create a legacy as we're living, so our children and our families can enjoy it while we're here. So the legacy zone activities really are a reflection of how do you want to create the biggest impact in the world through these I have different activities. I have guys write, for instance, a fatherhood job description and mission statement. Like if when I work with guys and they say, well, I want a successful business, I say, well, would you know what that looked like if it hit you in the head? And they're like, no, they never wrote it down. So I want you to take time to look at, a description of what success would look like as a father, as a man, and in life.
Right on. And then the other one you've got in there is is it the Power Hour?
Yeah. Yeah, so the Power Hour is a morning routine that I created, and it stands for P is, so it's within an hour, and you could take what works. The P stands for peace. So the first 10 to 15, 20 minutes of my day, I sit in silence. I'll do some meditation. The O in Power Hour stands for openness. This is when I open up a journal and I just do some free flow writing. The W stands for who, what, why. Who needs me today? And it's very important because you talked about having time in your day. When you ask who needs me today, you can't be everything to everyone every day. So the only people who really make that list every day is my children. The other W in power is what do I need to do? So I keep the what I need to do, the 2 to 3 things of my most important things I want to move forward today. And then the why is, why am I about to do what I'm about to do? I take the old Steve Jobs, who, quote, he used to go in front of the mirror every day and say, if this was the last day of my life, would I be doing what I'm about to do? And if the answer was no, he'd change it up. So I always ask, why am I doing what I'm about to do, so I can stay focused. The E is some kind of movement. It stands for exercise. And the R stands for reading or watching a TED Talk, something that can really, I could take in and lift my spirit. So that's what the Power Hour stands for. And, if your listeners are interested, let me know. I could send them a free PDF of the Power Hour. I have a ebook on the Power Hour. So just for your listeners, I can offer that for them.
Awesome. And so what's interesting is I think at least in the areas that you and we cross path a couple different times, at least on Facebook and Twitter and the social realm, is the acceptance of kind of this meditation, this mindfulness, coming from I think we're similar in age. You look like 20 years younger than me, but the deal is how hard was it to initially get into that groove of meditation?
Well, yeah, you got to understand, Brandon. Like, I'm from New York, man. Everything goes fast. We're not into, and I remember going to California. I was like, whoa, this is some real woo-woo stuff. Like, float away. Like, what does this mean? What I realized was, like, so I like fast pace comes easy for me, and hustling comes easy to me. Like, I'm from New York, and one of my favorite quotes is Mozart said, "Music isn't in the notes. Music is in the space between the notes." And what I realized, Brandon, and it has to do with meditation, is that if you only had notes in a song, it'd just be a lot of loud music and noise. And the best way to describe it is, before I was meditating, there was always like the noise. It was a lot of noise and having to do things. And the interesting thing was, when I slowed down, when I gave myself the gift of my own attention and slowed down and meditated, things started coming to me instead of me having to go towards other things. Or have to always go after things. So for me, it was crucial. It wasn't easy. It was a process. I started with like an app called Headspace.
I love it.
Which is a really good app. I think that especially people who are beginning in meditation, it's an easy 10, 20 minutes you can start with, and then my practice grew from there.
Personal curiosity, I use Headspace all the time. I love it. As a matter of fact, it's scheduled sometime today. I'll put my 20 minutes in today for sure. Where do you go after Headspace?
It's not a like next step thing. It's kind of like I always am open to hearing and seeing new things, and have tried different things. So whether it's just really, I remember I did 90 days of hour silent meditation, just straight nothing. And then they have like transcendental meditation. So, it's different. It really is where
that sounds like some California woo-woo shit to me right there, bro.
Yeah.
Sounds like you went out to Epsilon and Big Sur, hung out there for a little bit, and you're like, man, can I just stay here, bang on the drum, dance on the fire for like the next 45 days?
And you know what it was, Brandon? It's not a prescription. This is just kind of some of the stuff that works for me.
Yeah.
But yet and still, I don't have a prescription. It's not like I have to do this or else my life is going to fall apart. It's just, I found to have what brings joy in my life and how I can bring fun and some peace. So, especially in the loud New York streets where I'm always hearing. I remember when I went to California and I was like, I couldn't sleep because I heard crickets. In North Carolina too, I heard crickets and I was like, where are the sirens, bro? Like I can't sleep without any sirens going on. So don't get it twisted. I'm not, I'm still.
We've got some new neighbors down here from New York, and they literally duck from the bugs, and it's like air bombers coming in, and they hit the ground, man, like poof.
Yeah. It's a whole different world.
Oh man!
And you're in North Carolina, right?
But dude, I'm right out. I'm like I said, I'm 30 minutes outside of Raleigh. If you've ever been down to Raleigh, they probably don't have a right to call it a city. Especially coming from New York or Philadelphia or somewhere, you're like, that's cool. Nice little spot you guys got there, right? So if you get a half hour outside of there, I'm in country, brother. Like right outside. My first time down here, 5 days after moving down here, a bunch of people walked out behind my yard and started shooting guns, like shotguns. I'm like, what's going on here? So
right,
North Carolina.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the guns I'd be used to hearing. It's just the crickets, right? So the funny part, when I went to North Carolina, I played college basketball right outside of Charlotte, and I went down there, and I was coming straight from New York, man. And I remember when I first got down there, people were, we have an accent. Larry used to, we know Larry. He used to make fun of my accent. Like we. When we go to that place, it's called the mall. It's called the mall, right? The mall, MAWL, the mall, right? Yeah. Well, we play ball, right? So I remember these people, when I came to North Carolina, they were saying, hey, let's go to the mall. And I was like, what the heck is the mall, right? So we go to the mall, and it's my first day in North Carolina, and people are walking in, and I'm 18 years old. People are walking in, and they're passing me, and they're saying, hey, how are you? And I'm like, why are they saying hi to me? Do they know me? We don't say hi in New York like that. So,
Right.
But it was a great experience, man. I enjoyed the slow down pace of North Carolina. I love my peoples out there.
It is a different world, man. It's a different world. Like I told you, I came down here from Philadelphia area, and we're like, dude, why is there nobody's got any sense of urgency down here? Nobody's got any sense of urgency. I think it's just because it's so hot all the time.
Right.
One of the things that I struggle with, and maybe you could just kind of toss an answer at me, is trying to teach our children not from a place of like fear, right? Like not from like punishment, but by encouragement. What would you tell me? I mean, just as that relates as a father who's going through it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been a journey and a work in progress. I think that first of all, we have to look at kind of ourselves and how we were parented, and we have to oftentimes that's passed down, right? Like we're parenting out of fear, and it's the old do as I say, not as I do kind of authoritarian mentality. And I mean, we could go to just the basic level of children don't learn best in those environments. I mean, research has shown that. And I know that it's hard to understand, but it's true. Like if you have a lot of pressure, if you have a lot of anxiety and you're dealing with fear, you're never going to be at your best. Now on a practical level, usually when we're focusing on fear of our children, we say it's about them, but it's really about us. And we're kind of transmitting our own fear. So whenever, you're yelling or you're mad or you're basing your stuff out of fear, it's really a reflection of some work you have to do. And nobody ever gets there. There's no I've arrived moment, but it's always an opportunity when I'm, whenever I get out of myself with my children, it's an opportunity to say, okay, that's just a reminder that I still got work to do on myself. So if you're basing in fear, you have to look, for me, I look within and say, what is the fear inside of me? Like, what is this real or imagined? And most of the time it's all imagined because fear is never in the present moment. Fear is always based on something in the future, right? So there's no suffering ever unless you're somewhere in the future or somewhere in the past. And when it's a fear-based model, it reminds me I got to get back to the present and try to enjoy the present moment.
Right on. I love that. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
That was awesome. I'm letting it sink in. Look, man, you got behind you right there. You've got your board. Let's talk about what's on your board, brother. Your Fatherhood is Leadership book tour. What I don't see Raleigh on there. I see Raleigh. Charlotte. All right.
Carolina, Charlotte. So when I come to Charlotte, hopefully you could come. Yeah, I'm doing LA a couple weeks in October. I'm gonna be in LA, New York, Florida, Arizona, and then next year I'm going to Amsterdam and London. So it's exciting. The book is really spread. You know, it was #1 release on Amazon when it came out a few weeks back, and I'm just excited. And for me, to be honest, and this is just straight talk. I'm really excited just about the impact it's making on men's lives. And if the book just gets in one person's hand, one man's life, it changes the way they show up for their children and that's their family, I feel like my job is done. So it's not really about the number of books sold. I'm not so concerned about that. I'm really just want it in men's. I think that once it gets in men's hands, it really is a game changer.
It does. Hey, listen, man, it's definitely, it's had an impact on me. And it's one that I think that I'll go back and reread simply because I read it. And it's like you said, it flows very well. The stories are great. And it actually made me, and I haven't finished watching it yet, want to go back and watch 36 Chambers, Shaolin Temple, right? Like I was like, shut up.
That's right.
Let's talk about that for a second though, actually, because that was actually a lot of fun. Outside of Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers was nothing that like I watch all kinds of Kung Fu, but I hadn't gone back and watched like some of the old Lips, like, you know, being all jacked up.
Yeah.
And dude, I was right there with you though when you were talking about, you get done watching it and you and your friends, you just like go jumping out the front door. You're like, whoa! You guys just start jacking everybody up, right? But let's just talk about a little bit of the 36 Chambers and how that comes across and how you shared that in the book. I thought that was really awesome.
Yeah. And for everyone listening in or watching, I mean, those are the Kung Fu flicks where they used to be like, damn you, want to fight? Fight me. So the words never went, right? And for me, we used to go inside as kids at 12 every Saturday and watch it for an hour. And then we'd come out, like you said, and start practicing on each other. And there was a story called the 36 Chambers of Shaolin where, and honestly, Kung Fu was my first introduction to Eastern philosophy of like something different than the Western world. And there was this guy named Sante who wasn't a monk. So they didn't want to have him in the monastery. So they had him do menial work, like fixing stuff up, similar to like Danielson, wax on, wax off, and Karate Kid. And finally, the monk let him in, and he went through the 35 chambers faster than anyone else. And finally, he says to the master, he says, listen, I have to go out in the world. We have to bring this to our people who are being oppressed. And the master banished him. And people thought he banished him from the temple because he was mad at him, but he actually banished him because he realized that he had come to a point that really surpassed even the master. And he went back and he came, and when he finished his work, he came back and they created the 36 chamber. And the message is, you know, this is where we get that old adage, when the student is ready to teach their peers, that oftentimes the master, people who are really good and the masters understand that at some point the student becomes their master, becomes their teacher, and then they become the student again. And it's this process. And I liken that to my daughter, who's 20, who I will say, you know, has taught me way more about life than I've ever taught her. And she really has become my greatest teacher. I jokingly call her my guru. And I think that it's funny when fathers first hear that, they're like, well, what do you mean? But think about it. Like, there's nothing that gets you, gives you an opportunity to get present and learn more than your children. And I've learned more from my children than I've ever taught them. And because children have it right, to be honest, they're still at this playful, childlike spirit without all these stories and limitations that we put on ourselves. So whenever I'm with my children, it really is an opportunity for me to bring back to that place of freedom and playfulness. So that was the story of the 36 Chambers. It's a really good movie too.
It's like halfway done on Netflix for me, or I think it's on Amazon Prime right now. I forget where I've got it, but it's halfway through playing. And I'm sure that if you don't have Netflix or Amazon, it shouldn't be too hard to get a hold of. One of the other things for me that I find interesting about your fatherhood journey is not just how early you kind of started on your journey in the whole thing, and knowing that it was your path, but the other aspect of it that I find interesting is that you've had struggles with your relationships with the mothers, right? And so now you're separated, right? And both you've had two different. How do you handle that? How do you handle that? I know you said the first part. One of the first parts is that you maintained a very good relationship. I know with the first mother, and I assume the second mother as well. Let's talk about how you handle that with your kids, though.
Well, sometimes, one of the reasons I got out of the nonprofit world and because they had a lot of money in the fatherhood space is because they were continuing to put this fatherhood crisis label on things. And there is no fatherhood crisis in America. There's more fathers involved in their children's lives than any other time in history. What I believe is there's a relationship crisis, that we forget that we belong to each other. And then even though we may not be together, there's an opportunity for you to show up and really show your children what a good relationship looks like. And I've had that for up until my divorce with my youngest son's mom. We had a difficult divorce. And, one of the things that I realized through that, see, when things are going well, it's easy to be this guy with integrity. But what happens when the woman, when your ex-wife, when your ex-partner isn't acting the way you think they should, right? And can you still walk with that level of integrity? And for me, it was a journey of self-exploration. Of my divorce was really difficult, and I decided I wanted to be, I wanted to walk with integrity, but not self-righteous. Like, I'm doing the right thing, but I'm going to judge you. And where my relationship with my ex-wife changed was actually when I stopped thinking she should be any different than what she was doing, right? Mm-hmm. I stopped saying, well, she should act different, and understood that she was hurt and she was going through her own process. And if I could just be that and accept her for who she is, and I just still showed up and walked my walk and talked my talk, eventually things would improve. Because I think there's two types of people in the world, Brandon: owner and victim. Either you're a victim of circumstances, I got a tough ex-wife and my life is miserable, or you can be an owner. And the owner says, I take ownership of my relationship, of my life, of my happiness. And I did that. And to fast forward, man, like last month, the end of the summer, my son said, hey, do you think we can go to the beach with mommy? And it was me. She's in a new relationship, getting married, and she has a young child. It was me, my son, a child, and her went to the beach, and we had an amazing day. And I say that to say, stay in the game, guys. It wasn't always easy for me, but if you show up without judgment, self-righteousness, and understand, that things, if you keep doing the right things, things can get better. So that's my story.
Right on. Do the children, just out of curiosity again, like what do the children ever just kind of ask questions about the relationship in regards to, like, why aren't you still here type of thing? And, what kind of responses do you give to that?
Well, my two older don't, because they see the great relationships we have, and they really haven't missed out on anything. I've been so active and like, while I may, you might have you could be a full-time father in a part-time situation. So whether it's 4 days a week or 3 days a week or weekends, it's very important. My younger son asks, we talk about it a lot. And one of the things that's important is to let your children know that it had nothing to do with them. They're not the reason. It's one of the reasons I started out the ritual pizza night, which is every Friday night with my son, is because I wanted to create a space for me and him to bond and him to understand that even though mom and dad aren't together, it's not your fault. And I think over time and as they see and they watch, if you're always arguing, if you're cursing each other out, if you want to get yourself away from that, and especially you don't want your children to be a part of that, because you have ownership of how that goes. If someone, if there's two people across the street and there's a guy who's walking and he has it all together and he's doing the right thing, and you have another person walk across the street and they're out of their mind, and the two people get in an argument, you look across the street and you say, look at those two crazy people. So it's up to you if you want to engage in arguments and things like that, but there's another way. And that's what I try to show through the book as well.
Right on. I like that. I like that perspective. So, I mean, what you're saying is, maybe there's one person who's basically got it together. Another person, where's my finger? That he's a mess. But they get together, and from an outside looking in, they're both crazy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like that. Obviously you're a big reader. I heard you mention, here's the other thing too. You use the word a lot in your in your interviews, and I'm pretty sure this is purposeful. Integrate versus work-life balance. You want to talk to why you made that differentiation, and I want to say that it may relate to is it Stuart Friedman? The
Stuart Friedman. He's the director of Wharton Business School. Yeah.
I took 75% of the course on Coursera through him. And so you're the only other person I've ever met in quote unquote real life that's been through that. You want to talk a little bit about integration versus kind of like work-life balance and what that means?
Yeah, I mean, work-life balance to me is kind of like the regurgitated rhetoric that a lot of people have just said over the years that makes no sense. It gives you this false sense of hope that somehow you're going to have a perfectly balanced life, that like a seesaw, it'll be this balanced life. And it's not true. There's no workforce that you go in for 3 hours and you say, and your boss comes and says, hey man, you've been working for 3 hours. Why don't you go do Pilates for 3 hours so you can get the other part of your life balanced,
Right.
There's no stay-at-home dad who's just like, hey, son, I've been with you 3 hours. Now I got to go do some other thing in my life. So when I look at integration, Stu Friedman was great. He gives this analogy of a jazz quartet. And I love this analogy because if you look at, say, 4 quadrants of your life, home, work, community, whatever community that is, and self, right? And your self-care, whatever the part of that. If you look at it, it's like a jazz quartet. They're different instruments. And if you go to a jazz quartet, sometimes the bass is the soloist. It gets all the attention. Sometimes the percussion, but all together, integrated, it makes beautiful music. So integration to me is understanding that there may be times where I need to focus to finish on my business. And I say, hey, son, I can't right now. I need 2 hours or 3 hours. I need to finish this project. And then we're going to create some time. I'm going to give you an hour or so, or we're going to create some time where we go to the park and I shut down. It's just me and you. It's an important distinction that we integrate. And the other thing is, it's not work-life to me. It's life's work, right? This is our life's work. This is all life. And to successfully integrate it, I think we have to break down this myth that someday it's going to be perfectly balanced, because it never is.
Right. No, that was another big one for me listening to you. It's not, it's our life's work. This is something you've been doing now for how long? About 20 years? About 20 years? Is that right?
Yeah, man. Well, I've been into personal leadership development for a number of years. Even when I worked for nonprofit, I ran the programs and I used to try to integrate it there. So yeah, man, it's been a work in progress, and just grateful, now, for the last few years, I have my own practice and coaching practice. I speak, pretty frequently, and I get to meet cool people.
Right after you went out to OJ, right?
Right after OJ, man. California. That's right.
California. You also mentioned a couple books that you put in your top 5. I think you mentioned Carol Dweck's mindset book, which for me definitely revolutionary. I love that book. That's another one I got to pick up and read
Yeah.
again. What are some other ones? I heard you call out top 5. So what would be like 4 other books that really help along this journey for you?
So Mindset was definitely a really good one. There's another book called The Way of the Superior Man by David Dita. It's a really good book as well. I also like this book, just came out by Steve Chandler, called Right Now. It's talking about the gift of the present moment. Another book, I'm just looking at my bookshelf of recent books that really have been good. The Path of No Resistance by Garrett Kramer. And number 5 would definitely be Fatherhood is Leadership.
That's a great book.
Yeah, I'll throw in one more. There's another one called Mastery by George Leonard. And I'll throw in a 7th. I know this Essentialism was a really good book that I read when it first came out.
Oh man, I'll tell you. I mean, you're in the Dads as Alliance, as am I. And I know that they're going through that book as well. But you are the 4th interview, I think, in a row that has brought up essentialism. I've got it. I think I've read 3 pages so far. So it's on my list of books to finish reading. What is it about essentialism that kind of stuck out so much for you, that you love so much about it?
Well, it's cool because I see the guys getting on it now. I think it's been I had it. Somebody gifted it to me when it first came out, and I actually was in touch with the author, Greg, and good guy, and we talked a little. It's a little about what we talked about earlier, of like slowing down to the speed of life almost, and understanding that, and I talk about this in my book too, about there's an opportunity. You have to say no to certain things, because when you say no to the things that aren't as valuable, you're actually saying yes to the things that are. So, what I liked about it is, it gives the analogy of clothes in a closet. If you're always saying yes, you just keep putting clothes in the closet, and then when it's time to go out and you want that really nice outfit, you can't find it. And so oftentimes you want to clear the space so you can really just focus on your priorities.
I love it. One question I always like to ask people, fathers especially, is 10 years goes by, what would you like your children to write a letter to you about? Like, what would that letter look like if they write to you?
Yeah. If my children wrote a letter to me, I think that it would just be how they have found the joy in life, and not in the destination of life, but in the journey. And understanding that with even the ups and downs, that is all part of it. And hopefully that I've created a space for them where they felt unconditional love and support, and know that no matter what, I got their back, and I'm proud of them.
Very cool. Very cool. What's the most exciting thing going on in fatherhood space outside of you?
You, man. The fatherhood for the rest of us.
I'll tell you that podcast is pretty awesome.
I know. I think I'm honestly, it is the most exciting. Guys like you and men in this space who are just shining light on fatherhood. It's the best time ever for me, in seeing, being here for a while and seeing how much energy is behind the fatherhood space and the movement. So I love it.
Right.
Great.
On. Do you ever get frustrated? Like, I'll go look maybe I'll just type in like fatherhood, looking for fatherhood quotes. I go look for like dad quotes, or I go look for like fatherhood, whatever, trails that. And 90% of the time it comes up with like just this like bitterness towards like dads. And if you did the same thing with moms, there'd be like all this flowing stuff, or even you and I are talking about like how much we love being dads, and it's great, we're enjoying it. And then like somebody, you'll see somebody give a jab, like, why wouldn't you love it? Or just people being pissed that we're excited about being dads. Do you ever see that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember there was this big push about like how dads were being portrayed like on commercials and TVs, and I think like different organizations have shifted that. And one of the famous things that used to come up all the time is like on Father's Day, people wishing mothers a happy Father's Day. I see stuff, Brandon, to be honest, but I don't really pay it any mind. Like, there's no time for my energy to go to any of that stuff. It doesn't, I feel like people can have their own opinion. It doesn't affect how I want to show up in the world. And the less, energy I give to that, the more I can stay focused on my mission.
I like that. Now, is that something that was something my mom used to always say to me? So I grew up without a dad, right? So my mom was always around. And speaking of woo-woo stuff, I was born in San Francisco. So if that gives you, if that gives you any idea of the woo-woo stuff that I kind of grew up with, but the energy aspect of it, I can always remember my mom being like, don't put your energy into all that negative stuff. Is that something that you've passed on to like your kids, and like you try? They probably look at you and you're like, nah, right?
Yeah,
is that something you try and let them know about?
absolutely. And to always question, like, we always believe, we think something and we think that that's true all the time. So for me, it's don't put your energy into it, and always question your thinking. If you're in a state of like anger or dismay or fear, it's just your thinking. That's all it is. And the more we could question our thinking, I think the clearer things will be. So if someone's in a space and they're talking junk, like, I can look at it and say, oh my God, this is the end of the world and I want to fight this person. Or I can say, hey, that's their perspective, but that has nothing to do with how I'm showing up. So I try to pass that on. Absolutely.
Very cool. Very cool. Is there anything that we haven't touched on you think we should be letting fathers know out there?
Just no. I think that, we talked about, but guys, always, for me, it's a journey of self-exploration. And to me, what I've learned is for me to be the best father I can be and continue is a lifelong process of growth, and continue to push yourself to grow and learn, whether it's reading or listening to books or watching talks or watching a podcast like this. It's all necessary. And get around other fathers, get around guys, you get around a network of guys who you could share with and support. And I think that's another key, that, we don't have to do this thing alone.
Right. No, that's huge. I found it to be so, joining the Dad's Edge Alliance, right? It's like, you want to get around other guys that are feeling that way. And then also, I think in a local community, like, people you can actually touch, right? I think that's important too, that, that you can feel that kind of high energy out there. I love it. Dude, where can everybody get a hold of you, man?
I'm all social media, so I love connecting with people. Just DevonBandison, and my website's DevonBandison.com. And if you want to hear about the movement, you can go to fatherhoodisleadership.com. And for you, if you guys go to fatherhoodisleadership.com, you can get the first chapter of the book, actually, the PDF form of it, if you guys are interested. So thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
It's been a blast.
Hey, and don't forget to check out, guys, his TEDx talk, which is it's an awesome talk, right? You've only got one out there? When's the next one? Is there a sequel?
It's funny. Someone was just asking me that. I don't know. We'll see what comes up, man. We'll see what comes up.
Right on. Devon, thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me, brother. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.